My hair, I'm having a slightly weird hair day, but never mind.
Me too.
Anyway, so happy to see Laura. And I was just reading different things about the long search for Boo, and who just disappeared there, you know. And I had read some of the book, but I have never read the whole thing. But I've read enough to really enjoy it. And you're a great writer, by the way. Your descriptions of nature also are extraordinary.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that.
Very poetic and excellent, really. Good. And okay, really so are you ready? Are you recording now, Justin?
Yep, we're on.
Okay, so let me start. Let's go like this. And welcome, everybody. And especially welcome, Laura Galloway. What a pleasure to see you. I haven't seen you in the flesh for, several years, but we've corresponded. And
yes.
I was thrilled to receive your book, I guess, last fall. Was it? I forget when I did exactly. And let me just introduce you a little bit. Laura Galloway is a writer and communications strategist. I need your help, by the way, professionally later. She began her career at the Los Angeles Times and holds a Master of Arts in Indigenous Journalism from the Sámi University of Applied Sciences in Kautokeino, Norway, and a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the USC in Southern California. An ardent animal lover, she and her partner live with her 2 reindeer herding dogs and 2 cats. But the dogs have no reindeer to herd, I think, in England. Right? You take them up to Scotland to find a reindeer?
They herd squirrels now, Bob.
Aren't there some reindeer in Scotland? No, there are no reindeer, maybe other kinds of deer. Well, it's so...
No deer for the dogs.
You're welcome, Laura. And I have another reason for being excited about Laura, in that the relationship with the Sámi. Because what people don't know is that the Dalai Lama loves the Sámi. And when he got his Nobel Prize, I went to Norway as part of the having been nominated him. And when I met him first time, we met in the lobby of the hotel. He says, "Oh, I'm so excited." I said, "Why?" Because I knew he wasn't that excited about the prize. He was very humble about it. But he said, "Oh, Laura, what happened? Are you not there?"
Oh, what? I'm here, Bob.
Oh, well, I lost seeing you, that's all. Okay, so he said, the Norwegian government is going to take me to meet the Sámi. And at the time, I didn't know much about the Sámi. He said, "Are you coming? Can you come?" And I couldn't, unfortunately. But I saw a videotape of him doing a reindeer sleigh ride with the Sámi and people taking pictures and people excited. And it was amazing, and he actually turned to the camera, the one I saw, and he looked at the camera, stared at it, and he said, as the sled went by, he said, "I am having fun," he said. And he was wearing a big orange parka, a very puffy, warm one. And then what they didn't show the video was that there was a famous event among the Tibetans, because the reindeer kind of were spooked by so many cameras flashing and so on, so much press. And they kind of galloped away. And then one of his bodyguards leaped on the back of the sled and dug his boots into the snow and sort of became a natural break on the thing. I mean, I don't know how badly it was and how really dangerous it was, but he was then later credited of saving the Dalai Lama. So he lived that for the next decade or two, That was years ago, right? So the fact that Laura Galloway, my dear friend, who I knew from TED and from other things, she was there with the Sámi, flipped me out. And so I did read through the book as much as I can read any particular book along. And I love the book. So there you are. So Laura, how is it now? How is it, and what's the aftertaste of it all? What do you say?
Well, so the book is a memoir, and it's about why I ended up in the north of Norway. And I ended up in the north of Norway because many, many years ago, I took a DNA test, an early stage commercial DNA test that suggested that I had some ancient DNA shared with the Sámi people, which, as Bob said, the Dalai Lama was with the Sámi people. And those are the indigenous inhabitants of Arctic Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the Kola Peninsula of Russia. And I was quite taken aback by that result because I thought I was a well-traveled person, and I had never heard of Sámi people. I didn't know that the Arctic or the north of Norway had indigenous people. Mm-hmm. So I started getting really interested in the area, and I had been living in New York for a long time, and doing some work with Bob, among others, and living a really busy, frenetic life in New York as a communications executive. And the life was starting slowly to sort of not fit for me anymore, just in terms of, I wondered why I was doing what I was doing. I was getting very burnt out. I had a very challenging, home life, or not home life, but a backstory to my family, which I'll get more into in a moment. But in any event, the Arctic was a huge juxtaposition from the life that I was having in New York City. And I kept visiting again and again, and I loved the cold and the silence. And I eventually got invited to a wedding in a small village in north of Norway called Kautokeino, or Kautokeino in Sámi language. And at the wedding, I met a reindeer herder, as one is likely to do at a Sámi wedding of reindeer herders. And we started a relationship, and I just kind of communicated with him after I left over and over. Life was not great in New York, and I was very burnt out. And I thought, I'll just go to Norway for a few months with my 2 rescue cats and go work there for a few months and do consulting from there. And the reindeer herder invited me to come to Kautokeino, which I did. And we lived together, and we're together for 6 months. And then in the dead of winter, my first winter there, the reindeer herder left. Just went to the mountains, said, you're on your own, we're broken up. And I had a decision to make. Do I stay or do I go? And that's when I decided to stay in the Arctic alone. And I stayed there for 6 years.
Amazing. I know, it's brave and wonderful of you, really. Yes.
So that's the book.
Beautifully in the book. And
thank you.
It's really, really, really marvelous. I really love it. And so then what you had a job there, and you even did a degree, and you learned the Sámi language. Was it very difficult, the Sámi language?
Oh, it's very difficult, and I'm terrible at the language. And, I went there in my 40s, and I don't have a brain for language, but at some point you just can't get away with only winks and nods. It's not fair to the people that have to suffer through being with you every day. I tried my best. Oddly enough, I did go to school to learn Sámi language, and I ended up making best friends with a Japanese woman called Yoko, because she was there studying the Ainu and doing a secondary sort of semester away. And the Ainu are, of course, the indigenous of Japan. So she was learning Sámi language for whatever reason. And the language of instruction is Norwegian or Swedish, and I didn't speak either of those languages when I arrived. But Yoko happened to have this little red book by a Japanese man who'd gone to the north of Norway and decided to write a book of verbs. And so I was learning through Japanese, learning Sámi language. It was just a very circuitous route to trying to learn the language.
Uh-huh.
So,
does it have any relationship to Finnish or Norwegian or Russian?
It's very close, very close to Finnish. It's very similar to Finnish. And what most people don't know about Norway is that Norway does have 2 official languages. They are, they're Norwegian and Sámi. So,
really?
You can get your driver's license in Sámi language. Sámi Gila, Sámi is how we say Sámi language. You can get your snowmobile license in that. The kids go to Sámi language school in the north. So it's two national languages in Norway.
I see. I didn't know that, but that's another good thing for Norwegians. It really, I love the Norwegians, actually. Even though my wife is Swedish, or half
Swedish, and then a Swede.
The Norwegians and the Swedes. Really something. Can I read a little passage from your book that I loved a lot?
Sure, I'd love you to.
or maybe you should read it yourself on page
I
188.
don't have it with me. You have to do it. I don't
What?
have the book here. I don't have the book with me.
Okay. It's such a great book. People, I just want to show people this lovely book. What does Dálvi mean, by the way? I know you said it, what it means.
It's the northern Sámi word for winter.
For winter, Dálvi, winter.
Yeah.
Okay. This I love. It says here, he said, I need to start to think about my life in the north with more of a plan in place. I do not want to return to America. Each day I feel as if I'm peeling off the layers of two onions. One is me and who I really am in the absence of trying to be someone else, a person that I think others want me to be in order to be loved and accepted. The other is this place itself, this deeply, deeply unknowable place in which every day I am forced to stretch and learn and discover something new because there simply is no other choice. And the land, for some inexplicable reason, has for me a magnetic draw for which words are difficult. It is being in a space that leaves no choice but for self-reflection and meditation, cradled by nature all around me. Strangely, I am more alone than I've ever been, but I feel safe here. Nature is my endlessly fascinating companion, leaving me every day in awe of its complexity and power and the absolute interconnectedness of everything, of how nature works like the finest and most intricate machine ever created, where everything has a purpose and a divine symbiosis. I start to see it in small ways, from luomi, the Sámi name for the bright orange cloudberries that grow in late summer and have exceeding amounts of vitamin C to keep all who eat them going for the winter when the sun will not show itself, to the natural migration of the reindeer to the coast to escape the mosquitoes and fatten up on the rich lichen that grows there in abundance. Nature has a plan, as I am learning every day with reverence. So I just love it, you know. It's like it's a really great meditative and sort of reflecting about your inner transformations.
Thank you,
and your
Bob.
inner thing. And I'm particularly would you say that the land or the people or the reindeer or being there alone helped you feel more loved on Earth? Mm.
I do. I think that the healing power of nature can't be underestimated because it's I feel like we face our daily lives with so many addictions in the modern world. I mean, they are to be on the internet, they can be healthy or unhealthy, to work out, to drink, to go shopping, to do stuff, to network. And there I just, as a person who's not been a great meditator, I had to spend every single day. I walked in nature, and you just so many things to see. And that became a huge meditation for me. And it had a huge power in sort of separating me from all of these external things that I kept throwing in my path. And there's something about nature that integrates you. You do feel connected to something. You can't look at the way the world works in that part of the world that is so harsh for part of the year. And then it explodes with all of this life, like almost overnight. The snow melts. You have gushes of mud everywhere. And it's as if nature doesn't have a lot of time. So everything pops up. You can wake up in one morning and everything feels like it's green. And you just see everybody has a job and a part working together in nature. And it really changes you when you watch this all the time.
You do mention a lot about you had
it's
a
the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, really.
Did it really come to the fore for you around that time? And tell us more about that.
I did. Well, so the book is not just about my time in the Arctic, but in order to explain why somebody would make such a big decision to move somewhere that far away, my mother died when I was 3.5. I was in bed with her. My father remarried a woman that was not very fond of of my father's children. I had one birth sister that I was very close to and loved. We have a lot of mother karma in our family, because then that sister, when all she wanted was to have a baby.
Oh.
And when that sister got pregnant, a few weeks later, she was diagnosed with acute leukemia. And she died a couple of days after my 16th birthday. So there was a lot of loss in my life, and also having a mother figure that was quite rejected in my life, and also having a mother figure that was quite rejectful, and I constantly felt like I didn't belong anywhere. And I didn't have support of a family that was there. My siblings were older, but I think they were all, dealing with their own drama and scars, and they're all much older than I am. I was the baby of the family, and so this impacted me a lot, because it creates a lifelong wanting to belong somewhere. And this really came to a head for me when I was in the Arctic, because I had to reflect on how that had impacted every decision I had made in my life, wanting to belong, not being true. I was working on the basis of my ego and not my heart. And unless you do a lot, epiphany, which, and that I really learned that the idea of home and belonging, I realized that so many people had stepped into my life to help me along through my life, because the book shows up until this point. And then also that home and belonging is inside of you, and it's a state of mind. It's not a physical place, and it's transitory. And that was very life-changing for me to make those realizations. But it took a long time, and, it's still a daily struggle. I started to have compassion for even my stepmother, but people ask me all the time, because there's quite a lot about how difficult it was growing up. But I don't think
the great thing is when you realize that the
forgiving
is, of course, benefits you.
Forgiven. It's like a muscle. It's like you have to constantly practice
go and
this.
tell the person who is harmful to you.
Our audience knows this, but I'm
you're fine,
haven't
been harmful. I love it.
Big epiphanies.
That's not really what it's about. It's about not bothering to carry on the disappointment and the injury, to heal yourself, and realizing somehow it's all about it's something they do because of their own problems, and so they're just handing on the harm that they received often, something like from someone else, type of thing. So you're the one to stop it, and I'm sure you really did. And so the thing about nature. So somehow the vast northern nature, and it became your mother, or somehow it rebirthed you in some weird way. I mean, it seems to be from the book. I get the feeling that you were reborn in nature. I don't know if do you know about these, what is it called? I'm sorry, because of my age, when I'm about to say something, sometimes it slips out of my mind.
Yeah.
But it's called forest bathing in England. And there's a guy in forest bathing who's a national treasure in Japan, who was originally, he flunked out of college 10 times. All he wanted to do was go and be in the woods. And then later he made a thing out of that, and some mentor found him, guided him through the thing. And he actually does scientific studies, and people who go and just sit in the woods, their different blood pressure and all kinds of markers change about their body, and they become more healthy. So then he developed Nishi's Yoku, something like where you forest bathe. You just go and sit in the forest. And in your case, there's not much forest there, right? It's more this vast open tundra, right? This tundra doesn't include a lot of trees.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly correct, Bob. It's so I lived on what in Norwegian is called the Vida, which is a plateau, and it's a completely different environment from what you would expect. What you might picture in your mind is quintessentially Norwegian, which are the big pine trees lopped over with snow. you have low scrubby birch trees, and you can just see forever and ever. And in the winter, it's all white. It a little bit reminded me of growing up in Indiana, where it was just cornfields, and you could easily run off the road and find yourself in the middle of a cornfield. But but just a vastness. And in the summertime and the spring, it's just gorgeous because all of the ground is covered with lichen, and it's very spongy. So it's like walking on clouds, and it's just the most amazing feeling. And it just looks very prehistoric, actually. Because it just looks like this is how the universe, this was Earth in the beginning. And I don't know if people remember Land of the Lost, but I grew up on that in the 70s, this TV show, and it reminds me of what that would have looked like. But yeah, it's stunning. Yes. Yes, that was probably one of the most special otherworldly things about living there, was the fact that you would see aurora borealis in abundance, and they tend to appear during 2 hour. We would call it the aurora hours, because they tend to show up between 9 and 11 o'clock at night. And you need to have very cold, crisp skies. So actually, October is one of the most perfect times for anybody that ever has a dream of going to see them. And yeah, they're gorgeous. But if you are in the north, you must never ever point at the auroras, as Sámi people will know that you're a tourist, because you do not point at them. It's Thor riding in his chariot. You don't tempt the universe, and so you don't point. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
There are a couple of different stories related to the Northern Lights, and I won't go into them because there are two stories that I don't want to get wrong.
Fantastic,
but I know that you do not
Another
point,
thing I'm so interested
you
about
can see them all the time, and you need to go to a place that doesn't have light pollution. That's the other most important thing.
Initially you had a boyfriend, and then
really
you had a lot of friends who dealt with it. And your whole description of the whole process of, culling the herd and laying aside the meat for the winter, which of course they have to do because that's their culture, and they can't survive there otherwise because there's no growing seed to speak of, and so on. And yet when your cat got lost, you're like flipping out. You're such a tenderfoot. And you're the bird that was wounded by one of your cats, you're like trying to keep it alive, and people in New York and the Bird Society, how do you heal a bird? You're such a non-violence oriented person, but then you somehow managed to participate, to be shoulder to shoulder with the Sámi where they butcher the meat and they have to skin the animal and all these things, which like fills me with like fear, and I'm sure it did first and so on, and yet you somehow managed that. Can you want to talk more about that? In a way, because everybody would know. I know some people who are strong vegetarians, for example, and Tibetans, they eat meat, isn't that awful? It's terrible, and they're Buddhists, and but the nomads had to because they didn't farm, etc. And the Sámi more extreme, of course, and much farther north, much harsher climate than Tibet. And so, please tell us more about that. Fascinating.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it is difficult with
right.
I mean, first of all, only about 10% of Sámi people are reindeer herders. So you have sea Sámis that have traveled on the coast that have never seen or don't deal with reindeers. But so I was in the heart of reindeer herding country, and it is very cultural because so much of traditional society is around the culture of reindeer herding. When people gather, they call it going into the fence, and that's when the reindeer are driven in from the tundra. The herders bring them in, and this is very much a family the family is all working together. You'll be out on the tundra for days and days in your tent, waiting, because the reindeer don't say, I'm going to show up, Bob, on 5:00 at Friday and you can herd me. I mean, this is just contingent on so many things. And it's a difficult thing to see. And it's, to see a reindeer being killed. I hate it. I saw it, but also as somebody that grew up in Indiana that never ever asked about, grew up on you have to have milk and meat, but never questioning that this thing in plastic came from somewhere and this is a sentient being. But it has been a reality of that culture from the beginning of time. That is how they survived. If you consider that you didn't have, and it's much the same in Greenland, I'll say, having been there, in traditional cultures survive that's the only way they can get food and eat. Now things are changing very much because now you have supermarkets and things and things that are flown up to the area.
So depend on it, and they care for their reindeer.
But historically, it was something that was necessary to do. In the winter, you don't have a choice of eating
James
any
Cameron's
other
Avatar
thing.
movie,
And
when that
you
Na'vi
can't,
woman,
even if you ate everything that grew in the summer.
That animal, she's sorry for it. She talks
it
to it, and she thanks it, and so forth. And it's the relationship is not just brutal, not considering it to have consciousness or anything, and yet it is a violent thing and a terrible thing.
Yes. Yeah. It is. But what I will say that I feel is different, if for people that the herders do, of course they eat reindeer, but one thing I'll say, the way that the animals are killed is very, very quick, and there's no factory farming. And it's for two reasons. The compassionate people kill the reindeer quickly. But also it's an issue of adrenaline getting into the meat. Reindeer have almost no fat. And so, and I think, they don't languish. They live free and then are killed very quickly. And also the people that I know, this is the most precious meat anywhere. And so it's
you had to
every part of it that can be
pasta.
eaten and very judiciously.
To make you pasta.
And so for people that must eat meat or historic, because there's still people that don't have the money to fly to go to the grocery store and,
it will probably remain that way, those who live there. And I don't think
it's in cultural context. I would say, I hope that people will think of it in that way. But I agree, times are changing. I
if you're
hope
really
it's not
crazy in the microbiome, there's life and death going on when you digest any kind of food, even a carrot. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And I do think that cultural context is very important, because I remember when I was working on my master's, I went to Nuuk in Greenland and was around, very people that live regular people.
Yes.
And you want to talk about a
the
remote
early
place
European settlements in
where
Greenland,
most
they
people
died,
will never be able to fly out of.
I
mean, it's a little tiny village, and then you can't get anywhere except by plane. And they, they eat whale because they have to.
And
they won't be alive if they don't.
I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting. Because so I think it seemed like to me that the people that you knew were very humane and very kind. And they were dealing with things, and yet they,
meal, but
and they like their reindeer. I think they're friendly. They like their reindeer, but then they do have to eat them. Some of them, they value them also because they know they are the source of their life. Actually, so it's more nomads. It's hard for city people, I think, to understand, but I think you did. But anyway, you were so amazing. So you went there with the boyfriend, but then you stayed. And then you decided you were a successful person in New York. You were doing all these things, but you somehow challenged yourself.
Yes.
The very little money you had, and you got a job even with your what
Yeah.
Sámi you knew, and you had first you were turned down, but then they begged you to come back. I love that. And then you really got into the students and so forth, and you could have gone on living there actually, right? You
Yeah.
could have gone on quite a while.
Yeah.
But why did you at some point then decide you needed to go back, or what happened? Was there some triggering event? And then you brought all the dogs back. I'm amazed that you didn't bring back any
Yeah.
reindeers. That's all.
Well, I felt like
Read that.
why did I come back? I came back because I felt like I felt a knowingness that this journey that I was connected by thinking I had this distant DNA, which I will tell you now, I am not a Sámi. I write a whole chapter that says I am not a Sámi and why. But I felt like as much as I loved being in that culture, I realized that I also probably for my life and finding a partner in the future life that I was going to live, that I probably needed something else. So I started doing consulting projects again, and I was doing a lot of them in England, and I ended up meeting my partner, Jonathan. And, he was a man who lives in Sussex and said he would never date anyone more than a kilometer away from his house. And he ended up dating me in the Arctic and really stretching. So going back and forth from the Arctic to Sussex is a pretty tough thing after a couple of years. So I made the decision to come down.
That was really
and I
interesting.
drove from the Arctic in a 20-year-old car with my 2 reindeer herding cats and my 2 New York City rescue cats, Rennie and Boo.
And Nina is very,
it was
she's
an
the
amazing
CEO really
journey.
of Tibet House, and sort of, but wants to retire from that, but the younger ones have to learn how to manage it and bear that. So she does. So I'm much more into keeping the kitchen neat and clean, and it's a big job actually, and I'm enjoying doing it. So I was really appreciating your tips about this cleaning and using that soap and.
Right.
Sure. What is that? Yeah.
Should we give my greatest ever cleaning tip to your listeners? People that want to be very natural with their cleaning, the greatest cleaning product you can have in your house that's amazing for pet stains or anything is go get the cheapest vodka you can find, the highest proof. No, this is the most amazing cleaning product. It takes smell out of anything, because if you're wearing winter clothing and you are in a lavu, which is a Sámi tent, smoking food and burning fires and drinking coffee, we don't have a Martinizer
one of my favorite
dry
pairs of
cleaners
pants.
there. I don't even think I know what the word is in Norwegian.
But
the thing that people would always do is to put in a spray bottle very strong vodka,
dal,
and it takes the smell out of anything.
So I'm very much making dal, lots of yellow dal, and you
it's
put
the best
turmeric
thing
in
for
it.
pet stains
And turmeric
too.
is impossible to get. I've tried every way. I'm going to go for the vodka now. I'm going to put. I'll let you know if it works on turmeric, which is very, very yellow.
Right. Oh, right.
It's a great tip. I think really, really wonderful. Well, now then, what? So in what you're doing now, the book sort of stops as you leave and as you look. And I have a friend who's a very
it's
big literary guy.
Smells, but we'll see how it does on
he's
color.
A Jonathan.
I'm curious
Cott.
to know.
He's a wonderful another Jonathan Cott, and he's a wonderful person about he knows all about Blake and I don't know what all, and he gives me great I learn from him all the time about literary things, and he has a thing where any book that he looks at, and he also does reviews sometimes, but not so much nowadays. But anyway, he looks at the last word in a book. And so I looked at this. I had gotten, but then I had not looked at the afterword, which really is in the book. And before the afterword, the last word is prepared. So I think that's your organizing thing. You're very organized, and really,
what's the
it's
last
so
word
wonderful.
in my book?
The way of your discovery of the interconnection and your appreciation of the nature. And from a Buddhist point of view, we forget about worrying about the DNA. You clearly were a Sámi in a previous life. You would go and be reborn as a blonde among the Norwegians or the Scandinavians or whatever. I don't care whether it's in Indiana or what. And so the DNA is even less relevant than the previous life, and because the DNA comes from your parents, but you yourself were drawn to that. And your complete Buddhistic enlightenment vision of the interconnectedness, which is what really flips me out, without necessarily formal Buddhist studies. I don't take credit for it, but you describe it beautifully, but then prepared. But then the very last word at the end of the epilogue is, I found the meaning of, well, I do not yet know what the future holds, but knowing I found the meaning of home, anything is possible. I think that definitely gets the Jonathan Cott seal of approval. To understand anything is possible is, of course, totally my watchword, And the first time I read the book, I didn't do the Jonathan Cott thing. I just did it just now, and I saw that anything is possible because you found the meaning of home. That's just so neat. My latest book is all about trying to get people not to be afraid of reality, because we are brainwashed, all in Eastern cultures too. And even indigenous cultures, people are kind of but maybe less in indigenous cultures actually, but because they're so close to reality in the nature, But people are brainwashed by more authoritarian cultures, to be scared of reality, so that they need the high priest and they need the boss, the king, or whoever it is, the chief, to sort of protect them from it, and then they're supposed to sacrifice their own direct connection, to the authority. Do you know what I mean? And then actually expose themselves to being killed in war, or like being enslaved in a household of patriarchal thing to women, and so on. So you, by discovering home,
that's right,
meaning that you found reality to be very harsh, actually, what other people would consider a very difficult and harsh reality. You found it embracing you. You found it in home. So now you're open to reality, and you know that anything is possible. I think it's a real result. It makes it where even you're too young otherwise to write a memoir. You're just a kid. You're useful. No way. You're useful. Listen, you're not even, well, women are, of course, more mature than men.
Yes.
My wife says that men tend to leave get over adolescence at around 60 or 70.
Well, no, I'm not a kid, Bob. I'm
an old lady get
now.
Mature by before death. But women much earlier, I know that. But on the other hand, you're super young and youthful, and one who knows anything is possible, because home is what you make of it. Home is your sense of being loved and embraced by reality, which I think to me is the big discovery in this book, and what people will learn from your odyssey, so beautifully expounded and elucidated, meaning given light in the book by your writing, by your brilliant and beautiful writing. I think that's what they can learn from you, really. Really. I love it. It's just wonderful. And anything is possible. And but anyway, so then in a way, so you found home with the Sámi, and because they're at home on the planet, Remember, Jesus said, "The meek shall inherit the earth."
Thank you, Bob.
So the meek doesn't necessarily mean someone who's groveling. When we hear meek, we only think someone who is some authoritarian personality person who grovels to the superior and then beats up on the inferior. But I think by meek, Jesus meant someone who is close to reality, to the blossom in the field, to the presence of the divine in everything, and feeling saved and loved by reality, actually. And so those indigenous people are more meek in that sense of
Right.
they're close to nature. Yes, there are. Well, aren't there polar bears there who eat? They might occasionally eat a Sámi. Did they want? I mean,
Yes.
threatening.
Yes.
Yes. But the Sami then have no history of
No,
predators who might
no,
attack a
there are
human.
no polar
Wolves,
bears
I'm sure there were in
in
ancient time, plenty of.
continental
Eating
Norway, but
reindeer,
on
there must be
Svalbard, the
apex
island,
predators where you have reindeer.
Spitsberg, that is where you will find polar bears. But you are polar bear free in the north of Norway, except for that very far island.
Ah, oh really?
Um. Oh, the apex predator, one of the really big apex predator for reindeer is the golden eagle. They're gigantic. They're astonishingly big. I mean, I drove past one once, and you can't believe how big they are. It's like seeing a horse with wings hanging in the air, and it was just hanging there. And they're just so quick, and you don't often get to see them. But they go after the baby reindeer. So you have that, and then yes, wolves can be predators.
And then the apex predator is the human.
But it's really the golden eagle.
In the old days, I bet there was a lot of wolves.
Oh, and it's wolverines.
But the point is, because there are predators, then this makes humans afraid of nature, right? Like right now, the wolves have come back in Wyoming, places like that. Now the right-wing governors in those places are just handing out passports to people to go and shoot them all again. Which is really bad because they're part of the chain and they keep down certain kind of small animals that otherwise ruin the pasture. And there's a balance, that you have to leave some of them there,
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Right.
You're completely right, and I think that's when sorts of interference become really bad because nature is so complicated. Human beings just don't understand. So don't touch it. It's perfection.
Right.
Everything's doing what it should, and
right.
Yeah, I find that really upsetting.
I know. My book came out on August 3rd of this year.
Yes, I left way before COVID. I wrote the book during COVID. It came out on October 15th in the United States. So that was actually a good time to write a book.
Removing layers of natural balance between bats and ourselves, whether engineering in some idiotic manner, as they might have done in some lab there,
COVID.
Or by just the fact that the intervening layers and insects in this mass extinction that's going on, all kinds of things that would have kept bats, viruses away from humans, are those, and the forests being also depleted. This has exposed us to this zoonotic diseases and so on. So, but and in your work now, so what are you doing now with your new enlightenment? I really think you're enlightened. You really express enlightenment to me. It doesn't need because enlightenment doesn't come from a religion or from a bunch of theories. It comes from the experience of human beings encountering reality. That's what it really is, and that you did. And it's amazing how you challenged yourself to do that instead of just hanging with a therapist somewhere.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. Well, one thing I want to say one of the things about the North that I loved, and I'm old enough to be able to feel really sad for younger people, because do you remember when we used to be able to travel and you would go to a city and you didn't have the internet, you couldn't be looking on your phone, you would just go somewhere with no idea. You might have read about it in a book. What am I going to see? What's it going to be like? People don't speak the language. You're completely in a completely new environment. And this was a feeling I had not had since I was a lot younger, because everything is now instant gratification. Here's the answer. The map is on my phone. Here's where we're going. I'm translating what this person's saying. And when I was in the north, because this is 40,000 people speak the language of the village of northern Sámi. There are different dialects. But I was in a place where
they were. You must have had the first winter. You must have had really.
And you just couldn't figure it out. And there was something I really loved about that. You know, it was amazing. I'm just not getting the answer here. I have to learn everything.
In October, he wrote,
and I did love that.
The nights are really long here. Then in like November, the nights are really long here. Then December, it's all night, all the time. And it was really turning to drink, I think, almost except he had a job and he didn't do that. But I'm saying it was really, really hard.
Oh my God.
So that's the gift of the Incas. You realize that you're bringing the gift of the Incas there.
You know, Bob, I turned to potatoes. Potatoes and bread. You just, it's so cold outside. What time is it? It's 10:30. I think I'll roast some potatoes. And then
really?
Well, I have to say, winter is fine. What I find far more unsettling is when you have 24 hours of sun, because I think a lot of people that have trouble sleeping don't realize that an essential part, to my mind, of falling asleep, I know this from being in 24 hours of sun now, is the slow moving into a darker, you know, the sun going down. But when you don't have that, it's really, really discombobulating at 2 or 3 in the morning. And in my village, because it was safe and you're in the north and people are in all during the winter, kids are
do you stay in touch with some of your
Sámi
friends and you go back now and then? Or you and Jonathan?
And you don't have formal meals. The moms just put the food out on the stove on the hob. Everybody eats when they want, and you can stay up all night if you want. So to me, it was like, oh my God.
From the COVID?
I stay in touch with everyone. COVID has made it impossible because the rules have been quite strict about that, but I intend to go back.
It is.
No, but the Scandinavian, Norway, not Sweden, but Norway has been strict about
in your work.
entrance and exit rules and things like that. So the time hasn't been right, but
public relations strategies.
Of
you
course,
still do that kind of work?
It's such a big part of my heart. I got 2 reindeer herding dogs. I would love to take them back up, and you know that's where they're born. So. You know, I haven't done it lately, Bob. I've because I was focused on the book and thinking about maybe another, but another thing, and I'm still would probably do it, but I've become really, it also opened me in other ways. I realized things that I'm interested in are just more
the nature with the
fulfilling
Brexit,
things that are closer to people. So
really.
Of course, I've been in England.
So that's really
been
good. But I was only thinking
I've
that
been volunteering
your special
in
knowledge
food
and
bank,
how
and
you
I
found
kind
the
of like to do
planetary
palliative
home for
care
yourself
work
through your
because
connection
it just kind of took away all fear
indigenous
of
lifeways, makes you very positioned for the huge revolution that we need to save the planet, where we need the wisdom of the indigenous people. And not that we can go back to being indigenous in the same way now because of our massive population, but we need to learn from them how to even
Yeah.
support a more massive population with the two technologies that we have, but with their kind of outlook on
Yeah.
life. And so you're in position beautifully to write and to teach and to do that in extraordinary ways. I mean, your book
Right.
is that does a big teaching like that. This is a great teacher for people. If you're out in the Bronx or in Brooklyn or
Yeah.
on Central Park West or on Fifth Avenue even. But think about trying real winter, trying
Absolutely.
Dálvi, You really think about it because it's real teaching like that. And of course, I'm in a
Thank you,
similar.
Bob.
We have our Tibet house. Nobody quite knows what we're doing, but we're his Dalai Lama's cultural center in America in a society that is being genocided. They're not like nice Norwegians. The Chinese actually are not like nice Norwegians, and the Chinese people, and they love Tibetan lamas, and they love Buddhism, and they love the magic of Tibet. But the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, they don't love what their people love because they don't need to be elected by their people. They have an iron chokehold on their own people. So naturally, they are crushing Tibetan culture. So I'm very concerned with this dialogue and the learning of the wisdom of the life ways of the indigenous and the so-called urbanized and the technological and industrialized. And how do we back off?
Right.
How do we re-indigenize industrialization in a way? You,
Yeah.
you solve it. You're the one who solved it personally. I'm an ivory tower person living in the Catskills, and I'm not. But when I drive a Tesla,
That if
I have
you can solve that one, I mean, I think
we have
the
solar
biggest
panels
issue when you see
outside,
this
and we're
faith
trying
in
to
the
do our
Sámi
best.
people is
But I didn't
that
solve it. But in a way,
what?
you are doing great solving of that, and I really, really.
Yeah. Well, I think
That's
bigger societies have to,
Yeah.
bigger societies have to value
But
nature.
maybe
over
therefore it's
commerce.
lucky
And I
this
don't know
huge
how easy it is
we're
to make
blessed
that
by
happen.
this
I think
huge
that's the
enormous
challenge
inequality.
of
Because the people who are
almost every
stubbornly
indigenous
insisting
culture
on
in the world
commerce have
is
become so
commerce
few.
over nature.
And
And
everybody
until people
else is
realize
stuck
how important
face
nature
down
is,
in the mud of
I'm,
nature.
fearful that
And
that
so
won't
they
happen
know
at
what
too
we
late
have
a
to get
time.
along. The masses that simply can't even the supposed democracy with all the kind of ways of suppressing votes and undoing it like Hungary and things like that, undoing the democracy by a small oligarchy. But very few of them. And really the really big ones are all trying to lead a march to escape to Mars. That's what they do in Mars. Remember the movie with Matt Damon? What was he doing? Eating
Yeah.
Listen, I don't want to keep you too long, and I think our people. I don't want our people to waste time with us cracking jokes. I want them to go read Dálvi. I do.
Yes.
They really
Eating
should.
potatoes.
It will really be because we'd be terrified if we were up in northern Canada with the Nunavut, with those people. The first, at least the Canadians call them the first Americans. The first. And the Sámi are probably like the first Norwegian Scandinavians. I don't know if they managed that, the Norwegians. But, thank you so much, Laura, about DNA, because, there's three genes.
Right.
Every human being has three genes, every animal, actually. They have moms, dads, and they have their own super subtle spiritual gene that they bring from their previous experience in other lives.
I love talking to you.
And therefore, some people are really driven to love the Tibetans. Some people love the Sámi. One Tibetan guy loves the Sámi. The Dalai Lama is totally, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and he wants to go. He meets the parliament. They have their own parliament, sort of.
And they love him too. I have to tell you, we can't get off without me saying that he,
because actually I think
made,
he, without
he came prior to my living there, but he made such an impression on the Sámi people.
But I personally see, and you have a political science degree, I personally see that the only way that we will be able to deal with the climate crisis that we're in, and Greta will be happy finally with us, dear Greta, is that we have to more regionalize, that these big, huge, complex countries where, decisions are made in some far-off capital about some place of lakes and another desert and another mountain and another northern and another southern, and the people in the capital don't know what is going on. And that's really destructive, the few, decisions like Brezhnev destroying the Aral Sea. He completely destroyed the entire sea, for cotton planting decisions, draining the rivers. And so the Chinese there's no water comes from the Yellow River into the Yellow Sea because they drain it for cantaloupes, in the desert areas north of, a lot of the flow of that river. So they drain off all the water. So the regionalization, and therefore different people having their own different say, about where they're living in front of them and how it should be treated. This is really, really important, Like more power to the Scottish if they decide they'd like to go back to the European Union. I'm all for them, No, seriously. And the Irish too, And the Sámi, their freedom. And, I think subliminally His Holiness realizes this is the way, and then you don't even bother so much with natural boundaries because you reconnect in the flow of trade and things like that, and when your own nature is not being harmed by some decision made for commerce by some faraway person who wants to come strip off your trees so they can dig something underground. So that's really easy. Anyway, I shouldn't go on. Laura, I'm so happy to talk to you. You're old. You're so young and beautiful. It's just, I'm a horrible old man. I just turned 80, which I'm really happy about.
100%.
I'm really happy about it. And you are only whatever you are, very young.
Bob, love to you. This has been so fun.
You did?
Thank you so much.
Well, that's hard. That's not even halfway. Now, for someone who can take energy from the Arctic.
Happy birthday, Bob!
The Northern Lights as an everyday humdrum event, and just be one with all of that.
I just turned 50.
That's hardly halfway there.
Yeah.
When you speak for Mother Earth, you do. And this speaks for Mother Earth. So please, everyone, read it. And I look forward to do you ever visit the States again? Do you ever come back? Don't. I'll be so furious if you don't. Give us a visit.
Thank you, Bob.
Or we'll come see you in the city, okay?
Aww.
All the best, okay?